Coming to you entirely pre-recorded from the Garage of Solitude here in Whitestone, Queens, I'm Mario Francisco Robles.
And from the Office of Justice, I'm Brett Miro, and this is episode 171 of the Fanboy Podcast.
And it's going to be a big one. It is going to be a big one because this has been one of the craziest weeks to cover DC on film, possibly ever, with some of the ramifications and, especially in light of all of the other stuff that's come out in the last few weeks that seem to be going in one direction and some interesting 180s and some outlandish rumors. So for this week's show, we're not going to talk about anything for now, except for this. We're not going to talk about what games we've been playing or TV shows we've been watching or movie. No. We have to talk about what's going on in the world of the DCU. And it all began with a blockbuster report from the Hollywood Reporter earlier this week that sent all of, DC Hollywood into a tizzy and all of DC fandom into what the hell is going on here? So there is a lot to break down. So Brett, are you ready to break down some of it?
I'm ready. I mean, listen, Mary, surely we knew this day was coming. I mean, we have new heads in there, right? So it shouldn't be that big of a surprise, but I think just getting it all at once, like a massive tidal wave of whoa, that's what I think is everyone's going. But it's we had to expect it at some point. The shoe was going to drop. We have new people running the studio. But we got to get into this. This is crazy.
Let's get into it. So we're going to kind of go chronologically with some of the rumors and things that have been put out there. We also have a response from James Gunn about some of this stuff. And we have some other murmurs from other trades that have been reported that we're going to touch on. But let's work our way chronologically because the Hollywood Reporter came out and they came out guns blazing with some very, very major announcements, right?
No pun intended. James.
Yeah, get it? Oh, I didn't even mean to do that.
Ooh, that was good though.
So look, right off the bat, one of the first revelations in the Hollywood Reporter's report from earlier this week is that apparently Patty Jenkins Wonder Woman 3 has been scrapped, where Patty Jenkins has turned in a script that she worked on with Jeff Johns, and she was all kind of gung-ho for this to be the follow-up to WW84. And apparently Gunn and Safran looked at it and said, no, thank you. And depending on who you believe, they were willing to continue to work with Miss Jenkins on it. They had some notes, they had some ideas, and even though they're at the very earliest points of plotting out their biggest story ever, apparently they already know what things they do and don't want for Wonder Woman to be up to. So they gave Miss Jenkins some notes, and Miss Jenkins promptly walked away from the project. So it seems like for now, at least, a Wonder Woman 3 with Patty Jenkins at the helm is now off the table. And Gal Gadot's future as Wonder Woman appears to possibly be off the table as well. Also in that report, we found out that there was a very interesting possibility for another Justice League movie with all of the existing Snyderverse actors. Apparently, the executives who Zaslav had put in charge of Warner Brothers and DC in a temporary basis before Gunn and Safran took over at the end of October. Apparently, those people were kind of high on the idea of, quote unquote, giving the Snyderverse Justice League actors another go around, one more, big film, possibly a Justice League sequel starring all these people. And that one also seems to be off the table. Also off the table, we hear Black Adam 2 might not be happening at all now, which is kind of crazy to think when, Dwayne Johnson's been going around talking about the hierarchy of power in DC is about to change. And your big game changer is heading right into the recycle bin. So, the big change is going to be the people who came in a week after your movie came out and said, never mind. But apparently Black Adam 2 is no good. And there's also rumors of a Batman Beyond movie with Michael Keaton, and we have a little more detail on that we'll get into in a sec. But apparently, a Batman Beyond movie has disappeared, and the biggie, which ties us into the Superman on film update for this week, is that the Man of Steel 2 that we've been hearing rumored of ever since Black Adam came out, ever since Henry Cavill announced that he's officially back and that the cameo is just basically the tiniest glimpse of what's to come, and there's still so much to come. After all that, it sounds like Man of Steel is back in the Phantom Zone. And that is something we talked about last week. You know, last week's episode was called, like, is Henry Cavill's Superman return in question? And that's basically where we're at now, because according to the Hollywood Reporter, shortly after Henry's return, the studio did, in fact, begin to hear pitches and start discussing the possibility of a Man of Steel 2. And they even, they had Charles Roven on as a director. And here are these interesting details that have come to light, where apparently Andy Muschietti of The Flash was interested in helming a Man of Steel 2. And the studio had even heard and read a script treatment written by Stephen Knight of, I believe his big thing is something called Dirty Little Liars, and he's done a couple other things. But apparently Stephen Knight turned in a script and the studio was not impressed. So that pitch is not moving forward. And as Peter Safran and James Gunn map out their big story, it even sounds like just Man of Steel 2 in general is in limbo. So there is a lot to kind of break down in all this, but I feel like I kind of want to start with the Superman. I know this is shocking to you, Brett, but I want to start with the Superman because this is crazy, right? This is crazy in that coming after Black Adam, we had all this press, all this buzz, all this momentum, all this energy around a sequel.
Yeah, all this
and
hype.
Now, all this hype. And now it looks like, at least for the time being, it's all on indefinite hold while Gunn and Safran figure out their biggest story ever told. So when it comes to Man of Steel 2 now, I mean, where do we start here? Without there being a biggest story ever told announced at this point, how do you feel about the fact that now it just looks like there's a possibility we won't see Henry at all, and that the Man of Steel sequel doesn't seem to be in the works anymore?
Well, yeah, like that's like having like you said, like all this hype around it, and then like immediately getting this news, like this 1-2 punch, like right after, is really poor timing and bad PR. I don't know like who allowed that or arranged that, or it's just the way the cookies crumble, but that's kind of bizarre. I've been very vocal, I think, on the show that I'm okay if they didn't bring Cavill back and they want to do a reboot, and I'm okay if they keep him. And I've been very happy that they are keeping him, and that all this news came out. So now hearing this, it is very deflating. It is very deflating. It's very. I know I've been okay with either or, but now that I've just kind of was like, I've already like given myself over to this option that Cavill was back, and now it's like, oh, and it almost like sours me on the reboot side of things too, in a way, just because I was just like, you're pulling my heartstrings.
To me too, like I focus on just like the egg on your face embarrassment of like the bad PR that this franchise has had so far. Can you imagine if like after Hugh Jackman had announced he's coming back as Wolverine for Deadpool 3, Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios like, well, we're not so sure about that. We're going to figure that out. Fans have had time to now start imagining it and get excited about it.
Yeah, you made a YouTube announcement about it. Like
and now all of a sudden, maybe not. To me, like this back and forth, this kind of like we can't really figure out our ass from our mouth type of situation at DC over the last few years. It's just I get secondhand embarrassment trying to follow this franchise as someone who isn't already deeply embedded in it. Like if I were somebody just watching another fandom go through some of this, I'd be like, wow, what insanity is at play here. But
I'd almost be like, why do you even want to be a fan of this stuff anymore? It's like, I mean, it's not that bad. I'm being like,
It
over the
kind
top
of
of it.
is that bad, though.
But it is
You
kind
know,
of like, oh,
when
man.
you have the biggest movie star in the world going around for years hyping Black Adam up and talking about Henry Cavill's Superman return and hyping up a battle between Superman and Black Adam and all these plans and all this stuff, and then it literally just like the plug gets pulled out from it within a couple of weeks of it coming out.
Yeah.
You know, it's just it looks really bad. It's got to be a terrible hit on the ego of Mr. Johnson there, especially if he really doesn't get a sequel and is possibly never seen again. That's going to be a tough one for him to swallow. And for Henry, I mean, geez, what a roller coaster ride things have been his entire run as Superman, trying to like get a chance to make that movie that cements his legacy. And every time it looks like he might have a chance, it just disappears out from under him. So look,
I also want to put in just really quick too on that.
Yeah.
Like, so also if you've been reading the trades, he is exiting the Witcher show on Netflix. Yes. And apparently they pitched it as like a creative thing. Like he hasn't really liked the way the direction the show's been going. He wants to hew more to the books. He's actually like, Henry Cavill's actually like a really big nerd and he's like really into the Witcher books and all the novels and stuff like that. So that's what they reported. But it came out so close to when the Superman announcement happened that I was like, he's definitely clearing his plate because he's thinking he's going to be busy making Superman movies, making buku bucks. And now like he left that franchise, which is by all accounts doing very well on Netflix, like enough that like they're not stopping the show when Cavill leaves.
Just because he's leaving.
Canceled. They recast it with I think Liam Hemsworth, which like kind of big meh from the community there. But so it's like, how bad would this be now if they're like, oh yeah, no, we're not using you as Superman, and then he just like dropped that whole Witcher thing. Like the creative thing wasn't true. They just dropped it just because of like he's thinking he's busy. Whew, that's gonna be like, if I was him, I'd be really mad at The Rock and Danny Garcia.
But here's the thing.
You told me this was a lock. You told me it was a lock.
But I'm glad you said this though, because too, like it also seems that some of my speculation from last week was wrong, where it's not just that Garcia and Johnson were trying to kind of pull a fast one and force Henry into the light and kind of force the studio's hand. It seems like the studio itself really was high on this. They say that Michael DeLuca and Pamela Abdy, who are the ones who were like the temporary custodians of DC and Warner Brothers until they hired Gunn and Safran. According to the reports, they really were. They're the ones who said, we want to move forward with Henry. They were the ones listening to pitches. It wasn't Gunn and Safran who heard the pitch from Stephen Knight. It was apparently Abdy and DeLuca. And back in September, when Henry shot the Black Adam cameo, that wasn't the only cameo he shot. Apparently, he shot a quick thing for Aquaman. He also shot something for The Flash, where rumors are that he was going to pop up as like Clark Kent in some way and whatever. And they were going to, they were going to incorporate him into that. So all of that is now in limbo. It's not just Man of Steel 2 that's in limbo, but apparently there was some kind of long range plan for Henry to return that is now just, it could all go poof. Or when Gunn and Safran are done kind of mapping out their story Bible, they're going to work it in there somewhere. The good news in all this too is apparently we're only about a week away from their formal sort of pitch to the studio.
The presentation to Zaslav and everybody.
Yeah. So maybe within a couple of weeks now, we're going to know for sure what made the cut and what didn't. But for Henry in particular, it does sound like what makes it extra bittersweet. Because it'd be one thing if it was like, all right, Johnson and Garcia and Cavill himself were basically trying to like pull a grift and it didn't work, But the truth of it is even the studio itself was like, no, we want Henry. And now all of that is kind of on pause indefinitely. The one note about The Flash that should be mentioned is that according to insiders, the film remains unlocked. The fact that they could still, depending on what kind of story they want to tell, they could choose to make some changes to it. It's not being considered as a finalized film as of this point. The trades are saying that The Flash remains unlocked, which means that there's still flexibility on how this goes. So, it doesn't seem like any final decisions have been made, but for now, at least, it looks like, all this Superman stuff is kind of in limbo.
Dude, so, this movie, The Flash, like the friggin' Ezra Miller drama, the reshoots, the delays, the change of scripts and directors. Then you have all this cameo, no reshoot with this cameo with a different actor. Now it's still open to more changes. Is this movie just going to be like a Frankenstein's monster at the end? Like, is this going to be, what was the movie that really got Frankenstein? BVS, right?
Yeah. Well, no, it was Justice League. It was the theatrical
Justice
League. That was like part Snyder movie, part Whedon movie,
is this
part
just some
Jeff
strange
Johns
Frankenstein's
movie.
monster now?
I mean, I don't know. But by all accounts, it is still like the best.
And it may not even count like towards anything, which is even more funny.
I think it's going to count to something. But I was going to say
it's going to have to, yeah.
The word on the street still remains that The Flash is the best tested movie DC has put out there in years. That people who are seeing it love it. They really do think it's going to be the kind of, just what the DCU needs. But again, see, so here's where I think we should read James's response.
We should, because I do want to mention something. after that,
and before we do
just
one last thing though, but while we're just talking about that original report, because there was a couple of things that were interesting about the report in a positive way, I think, which was that there was this interesting quick mention about finances, that apparently James Gunn and Peter Safran are not being held down financially, and they're not being shown lots of financial restrictions. Now, why is this a big deal? Because after the relative kind of misfire of BVS in March of 2016, the new brass at Warner Brothers came in right away with a desire to bring down these budgets. They were unhappy with how expensive Man of Steel was relative to the profit it turned. They were unhappy with how expensive BVS was relative to how the profit it turned, and the same thing happened with Suicide Squad and Justice League. They really felt that the first round of DCEU movies, because that's back during the DCEU era, just cost way too much and didn't make enough. So that's why in the years following, they found ways to slash prices. And that's when they started going into almost like the horror film mindset. They brought in Walter Hamada from New Line. They had James Wan there, who had already had success making Conjuring movies that cost $17 to make, but made $3 billion at the theater. They brought in Andy Samberg, who had done Annabelle and horror. They were tapping into their New Line wing at Warner Brothers, because they loved that all those movies could be made for under $100 million and make hundreds of millions in profit. So they were trying to find a way to streamline the process, bring costs down, bring profits up, and stop having these bloated, expensive movies. And that's why like Shazam cost like $90 million, and Birds of Prey was another very kind of like low budget affair. They were kind of like in a they were going for they were in cost cutting mode there for a few years. And now it seems like with Warner Brothers Discovery money now in play after this merger, it doesn't seem like Gunn and Safran are being told you have to do everything on the cheap. We're going to give you the resources you need to tell your biggest story ever told, and we're not going to be nickel and diming you on what these films should cost to make.
Well, also they just wrote off, right? They wrote off Batgirl with for taxes, and there was the other project too that they just there was another project they canceled too. It was something that was like shot already, or a movie, or it was like maybe a show. There was something else. I don't know. There was something else aside from the Batgirl, whatever. Stuff. Yeah. So they've been cutting that. They as soon as that stuff came in, they had layoffs, didn't they? They had layoffs. They've been cutting costs. And what do you think they're shedding all that fat for? So they got extra money to play around with this DC. They know that's where the profit center is. Aside from HBO, it's we have to leverage this IP. There's money there, obviously. So when you go like, wow, this new regime is so horrible. They're doing layoffs, doing that. They got to free up money, and that's why they're probably now not putting a leash on James Gunn and Peter Safran. Is we freed up a shitload of money. We have a lot of capital now. Like, make us money. You got to spend money to make money, baby. You know that's how the world works. This is U.S. capitalism 101.
And again,
you got to spend money to make money.
And it's another way in which this merger has led to like a 180 in their philosophy, right? Because, like,
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about the 180 on the multiverse concept, where, like, they were trying to just make a bunch of individual, smaller little movies in their own little standalone universes. Walter Hamada was very big on trying to just like silo everyone off into little groups and move away from the interconnected thing. And then Zaslav came in and said, no, we want one big coherent story. So we've discussed that 180. But also the 180 on the budgets, which, like now, we're going to give you the money to tell the most grandiose DC stories you can tell, So I'm all in favor of that. I know that there was a lot of scary stuff out of that report, but hearing that there's no financial restrictions put a big old smile on my face, because I don't want some low budget Superman movie. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But all right. So now let's get to Mr. Gunn's response, because a day later, remember, that's the interesting thing about James Gunn and having him as a DC boss. He actually responds to the BS online.
Yeah.
He doesn't let weird rumors go unchecked. He doesn't let scoopers make a bunch of Patreon money and gain a lot of clout off of bullshit. He comes out there and goes, this is real. This is not. Shut up. Like, he doesn't mess around. So that report came out. And the whole rest of the day, everyone's like looking at James Gunn's Twitter feed.
Yeah.
Going, is he going to say any of this is a lie? Or is he going to say it's real? Like, somebody, hello. And finally, a day later, he released a nice little thread responding to what was said. So here, I'm going to read it to you. He says, so, period. I love that too.
Yeah.
It shows like he knows like Twitter's like a dumpster fire right now of people freaking out. So he writes, so, period. As for the story yesterday in the Hollywood Reporter, some of it is true, some of it is half true, some of it is not true, and some of it we haven't decided yet whether it's true or not. Although this first month of DC has been fruitful, building the next 10 years of story takes time, and we're still just beginning. Peter and I chose to helm DC Studios knowing we were coming into a fractious environment, both in the stories being told and in the audience itself. Lots of nuggets in here. And there would be an unavoidable transitional period as we moved into telling a cohesive story across film, TV, animation, and gaming. But in the end, the drawbacks of that transitional period were dwarfed by the creative possibilities and the opportunity to build upon what has worked in DC so far and to help rectify what has not. We know we are not going to make every single person happy every step of the way, but we can promise everything we do is done in the service of the story and in the service of the DC characters we know you cherish and we have cherished our whole lives. As for more answers about the future of the DCU, I will sadly have to ask you to wait. We are giving these characters and the stories the time and attention they deserve, and we ourselves still have a lot more questions to ask and answer. And then he signed off that thread with another image of Alex Ross Justice League, although this time it wasn't Kingdom Come. It was them younger in their prime. Another Alex Ross, another time Alex Ross drew the Justice League. So I have my own theories about that, by the way. But okay, so that is Gunn's official response. Yeah, there's some speculating to be done there, and trust me, we're going to do it. Yep. But right now, just in terms of that response, you read that. What was the first thing that jumped out at you, Brett?
The first thing that jumped out was basically the first thing he said about some of it is true, some of it is half true, and some of it's not true at all. And some of it they're still deciding
if it's true,
if it's going to be true. And I think that's important. And it was something like you kind of your wording before when we were talking about everything. You kept saying limbo, 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 limbo.
Yeah,
that's what I want to stress to the fan base before you have another heart attack, because I know you already had them when this report came out. Before you have more heart attacks, like just because this iteration of Wonder Woman 3 is not happening, just because this iteration of Man of Steel 2 is not happening, doesn't mean necessarily that Cavill and Godot are out. It doesn't mean that we're not getting those movies at all. It doesn't mean that yet. Like, and again, I want to we'll go back to the beginning, like the report, like specifically when you read the wording in the report, this treatment of Wonder Woman 3 was not something they liked. So it was open to just be like, hey, this is not going to fit into what we have planned, but you can make these changes or adjust this. And obviously in the report, what we know is Patty Jenkins apparently walked away. Apparently she was also like real snarky about it. There's like a lot of extra details.
Yeah, she said
I always wonder that shit if like she sent an email with the link to the definition of character arc, apparently. Yep. Like
did
it
you
was
hear
just
the
like
rumor though? Since you're talking about it, did you hear the rumor
might as well,
that they might bring, like, apparently her thing had some of the repeat offenses from WW84, where one of the rumors is they were going to get Chris Pine's Steve Trevor back again for this. Oh. Like, if that's true, I'm totally with them being like, let's not go to that well.
And I'm like the one person who liked WW84. And it didn't bother me so much. But yeah, if they brought him back again, that's not cool. That's really bad. But anyway, so but again, it was the treatment. So now at this point, I really almost feel like, because I know Godot and Jenkins have been very like buddy on this journey together. So the only way I could see this not happening or we losing Godot is if Godot says, well, if Jenkins isn't doing it, I'm not doing it. But I don't know. Godot might say, I'm still down for a $20 million payday, and if we get a good script, I'll do it, and a good director. So that's the thing. The Henry Cavill thing, I guess that's going to be up to James Gunn and Peter Safran, and because we know that that Superman is going to be at the forefront and going to be the anchor for this new 10-year plan. I think that is still the main focus for DC Studios. So whether they want to build that off Cavill or they want to build that off a different actor. That's just the important. It's like nothing is locked in stone yet, and just because you're seeing all these things are canceled doesn't mean right now that, oh my God, it's not happening, and oh my God, it's an uproar. Like, we have to wait and see a little bit more. So just temper everything just a little bit.
Yep. So definitely the stuff about some true, some half true, some not true, some undecided. That is definitely a big pearl that came from this. Him acknowledging, by the way, because we've been saying forever, whoever steps into this job is walking into quite a situation. And he flat out acknowledges it. We knew we were coming into a fractious environment, not just with the stories, but even with the audience, which to me is kind of like, the Snyderverse versus everyone else sort of conflict, right?
Yeah.
Talking about the audience, and then talking about there was this one line that I really like where he says, the opportunity to build upon what has worked in DC so far and to help rectify what has not. So that's very important. That once again, because I feel like one thing we didn't mention about the THR report is that the big like walk away point for that people took away from it and were freaking out about was that maybe he's going to do like a full on hard reboot, really like pull the plug and start from scratch after Aquaman, because it looked like nothing was safe. If he's willing to say goodbye to a Wonder Woman 3, if he's willing to say goodbye to a Justice League sequel, if he's willing to say goodbye to all these other potentially big event film opportunities, it means that maybe they are going to have the balls to pull the full hard reboot we thought that everyone was scared to do. But by him coming out and saying that we're going to build upon what has worked and help rectify what has not, that shows that he does see that there's things that, he's taking a little that mix and match approach still. So I think that's an important part of his response. I also want to touch on some of the other interesting rumors about Superman. Something you said reminded me of this.
Sure.
One of the other rumors that has popped up since this is that Walter Hamada had apparently had some kind of quote unquote long range plan to have Henry come back for a Crisis on Infinite Earths event film at some point down the line. And that Dwayne Johnson had essentially kind of muscled Henry into the Black Adam end of things instead. But just, while we're in this interesting zone about Superman and Superman opportunities, I needed to mention that as part of the interesting rumors. So what do we do here? Like in terms of Superman, in terms of the future of everything, Gunn continues to use images that have Superman right at the center of the action whenever he posts about DC related stuff, whether it's the Kingdom Come image, whether it's the Justice League image he posted at the end of the thread earlier this week. He always makes sure to have Superman front and center. Also, as we've discussed, it has been reported that it was Gunn and Safran themselves Gunn and Safran who were in Zaslav's ear these last few months about the importance for Superman and having our AAA titles firing on all cylinders. So with that in mind, that tells me that whether it's Henry or it's a new actor, there's going to be a lot of Superman storytelling as part of this big, massive story that they're going to tell. And for me, as long as there's Superman coming, I ain't that sad. You know, I love me some Henry Cavill. I would have loved him to get that chance to do his thing. But at the end of the day, I love Superman more than anything else, more than any one portrayal of him. So when I read all this stuff, as long as I know that Superman's future on the big screen is still like a big part of Gunn's plans, I'm not that upset at it. I'm not that worried. I'll be sad for Henry as a fan. I'll be embarrassed as a follower of this stuff with all the egg on the face after Black Adam now that's going to happen. But am I going to be devastated? Am I going to boycott a reboot? Am I going to have some kind of ill feelings about it? No, honestly, I'm not. It would have been nice. But at the end of the day, if they decide not to go with him, he's only ever been a part of polarizing films that get people to speak angrily at each other. He has yet to have that runaway, feel good, Henry Cavill is our Superman and involved in exciting things. He hasn't had that, and he's been in the role for 9 years. So if they ultimately decide to move on, I won't be that heartbroken.
Yeah.
But talking about what they're trying to pull off here, though, is interesting. Because in terms of like rebooting, in terms of like, staying the course, I think one of the main things that they wanted, one of the main things that they maybe were trying to accomplish this week is to let everyone know if you have a DC project gestating, hold off for now. We need to figure out our story. We can't keep having projects and movies and things getting announced and teased before we know our big story, So by him canceling Wonder Woman 3, or at least putting it on hold for now, by them putting Man of Steel 2 on hold for now, by them basically icing all kinds of plans, to me, it's a smart way to go, because imagine you're the new boss and you're in the middle of trying to come up with what these next 10 years look like. But every time you go on the internet, there's rumors about some other DC project and there's some other, different pitch coming in. You kind of need to tell everyone, stop, please stop. We're going to come up with the story and go from there.
Yeah, we got to seal the pipeline at some point.
Yeah.
We can't just let things still flying through the pipe while we're trying to build, the lake at the end. You know what I mean? The reservoir. Like the reservoir is not built and things are flying through the pipe. So it's like, we got to stop
taking pitches and awaiting draft, especially because one of the things too was like, aside from Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns working on a Wonder Woman 3 script, apparently you had Christina Hodson, who's already written Birds of Prey, who already wrote The Flash. So they already see her as like a very important DC writer there at Warner Brothers in DC. Who knows if Gunn and Safran feel that way, but Hodson has already written 2 DC films. And they asked her to write a Batman Beyond film with Michael Keaton as the elder statesman Batman, doing like the whole Terry McGinnis story. And there was even a rumor that Michelle Pfeiffer would have returned as Catwoman to continue the love story between him and Michael Keaton, between her and Michael Keaton. So that, that, of course, that gets a lot of people going, oh no, and now we're losing that. But here's the thing, like, if that's not part of the long range plan, you can't do it. You know what I mean? The whole point of what they're trying to do is, how are we going to come up with our long range? Here's our plan. When you have projects that were requested months and months, or maybe even a year before they took over, starting to try to get into that next stage of development, you can't do it. It's like we talked about before too. Whoever steps into this job is trying to deal with a train that has left the station. You know, this process is already
they're putting the
running.
tracks down as the train is moving forward.
So
and again, like I said, you have to stop it. You have to
got to tell all the trains, hey, listen, you may be heading for someplace great. You may not be. You need to just stay at your current station while we figure out where these tracks are going. You know, so part of what I got from all of this, part of like for me, what was like the real takeaway from all of these rumors today, this week, is that anything we knew prior to Gunn and Safran taking office needs to be rethought. And we need to just take a deep breath, because under the new ownership, they are going to they are going to decide the way forward. And it honestly makes the most sense to kind of ice everything until you have your core story told, you know? So in terms of the overall reboot thing, let's wait and see. Let's see what the big story is. Let's see if we get any teases or as to what the big story was going to be or is going to be. But all we need to know is that now things are still kind of in a weird state of flux. And when it comes to Superman in particular, my particular fandom has me more more focused on the character and less on Henry. So we're going to see if Henry comes back. But at the end of the day, as long as there's still Superman front and center, I think that's all that matters.
And I was gonna say too, like I don't, and whether he does like a full blown reboot or they just decide to like build a new, big arcing story moving forward, like I don't necessarily see that like the current actors that are attached to the roles have to go away for that to happen.
Yeah.
And again, going with what Gunn has said and how he says some of it's true, some of it's half true, the way he worded it, I feel like they're trying to do that, especially when he made the comment about the fractious environment and with the fandom. I think that would be a way, right, to maybe. I think they need to do the best thing for the story overall. So however that is, however it affects the fandom, I mean, it is what it is. But like, I think that means he is looking to try to maybe keep some pieces in play while they build the next story where it could kind of like unite the fandom. I think that would be his goal. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's always in service of the characters and story. We know there's going to be some victims. So
there's going to be, to make an omelet, you got to crack a couple eggs,
So aside from the news, can we talk about the images now and speculate a little bit? The images you're posting and what kind of story maybe we're looking at?
Yeah. So look, he's posted the Kingdom Come image of all of our Justice Leaguers, old and
a lot of Alex Ross, right?
Yes. And then he goes and he posts an image by Alex Ross of them young and in their prime. And something I tweeted out there is like, wouldn't it be interesting? And this kind of goes back to what we were discussing last week too, of like, we start with a story that has all of our heroes in their prime already kind of established in the world. And we end with a story 10 years later that is the Kingdom Come adaptation that we've been kind of like drooling over the very thought of. And because we haven't really seen that. Yes, we've seen a long story told over time, like the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe culminating in Endgame and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But like going for like now they're much older, and the whole point of the story is like we've gone on quite a ride with these characters, and now we're going to see them do that like one last hurrah retirement crazy story of Kingdom Come. So since he keeps focusing on the Justice League, he keeps focusing on the Alex Ross type of like mythical epic imagery of our characters, it plants into my head that we're going to have a story that starts with our heroes in their prime and ends with the Kingdom Come sort of adaptation. Where did your mind go there, Brett?
Well, no, I mean, that is where I'm going, but I just think like the implications of that is like really exciting. Like, like you said, we have seen, we saw this team of Avengers go through, but like when you look at it, like what was it, like a 10-year time span, like almost it kind of went almost like real to life. I know we had the time jump, but some people were dead and blah blah blah. Endgame. Okay, so but like we saw that in like which was really cool, and we definitely saw like character arcs and character development. Yeah. But imagine we get like let's like just throw out there like let's say 5 Justice League movies, maybe with the solo ones peppered in. I'm almost like thinking, I'm like, I don't even care if they do solo movies. Imagine they just give us like a big 5 Justice League ensemble movie arc. Like just do that and not even have the little individual stories. Just like give us a cool arc like that. Which I think Snyder was doing, but I didn't like where that was going. So I mean, whatever. It wasn't the story I wanted to see. But like, imagine having that like in their prime and like seeing them, and then like maybe between each movie there is like a time jump, or like you do the 3 or 4 of them in their prime, and then like between the 4th and 5th movie is like a 25-year time jump, and then we see these guys like wrestling with their own mortality or lack thereof of maybe their immortality or like everything they've been through, and then like with the Kingdom Come storyline, like dealing with these new heroes and like legacy, and it seems like a really emotional, I like the word you use, mythic like tale to tell about these characters, and that would be that might be the biggest story ever told. Like that would be a really incredible thing, and like just have this arc, and and then it's done, and then like we could start like kind of fresh again, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing though too, like speaking of like mythic and all that, like we know that Gunn can have a sort of quirky sense of humor. We know that he loves C and D list characters. Yeah. We know that he could go for something that's a little more quirky, black humor, dark humor type of like almost like an indie vibe. I swear that like that's the energy he brought like the Suicide Squad into Peacemaker, kind of like a more grown up kind of thing. But I think it's interesting that when it comes to the images he's been posting, it's nothing that's like funny or lighthearted or some kind of weird comic book oddity Easter egg like he tends to like to post. He's showing our heroes in their most epic form. Alex Ross's artwork is revered by most fans as like, these characters have never looked better. They look like actual paintings you would see in a museum. And the fact that he keeps referring to Alex Ross as his like representation for these characters so far tells me that he's treating this with seriousness and gravitas, and these heroes are not just going to be played for laughs. It's not going to be like some lighthearted James Gunn romp. He's looking to tell something that's got some meat on the bones. He's looking to dive in there and tell something that's going to have people on the edge of their seat wanting to watch this whole thing unfold over the course of a decade.
Well, it's like I think people, obviously they're gonna immediately look to the Marvel stuff that he's done, because like I already see like the snarky comments. Great, he's doing the DC now. It's gonna be a bunch of D-list characters and fart and dick jokes.
Yeah,
like I'm like, all right. First of all, like that is being so reductive, because like those movies are way more like obviously you're mad and you're just tweeting that online anonymously, but like you're wrong. Like you know what I mean? Listen, you don't have to like them. You're entitled to your opinion, but like that's just not true. So anyway, you're going to look at that, and then you're even going to look – people are going to point to his DC output. Well, he did Peacemaker and Suicide Squad, which were quirky, although I don't think Suicide Squad was exactly in the same tone as a Guardians of the Galaxy. I think he has levels to his tone. Yeah. But what you're saying, now it's different. He was just he did 2 projects over at DC. And then he was going back to do Guardians at Marvel. He's a free agent. He's now the head of DC Studios and the mastermind behind planning all of the money that they want and need to make over the next 10 years. Okay, so like, and I really don't think, listen, he's smart. He knows, he's been very involved with Kevin Feige over there and Marvel and seen how it works. I don't think he's just coming over here. It's clear he's not coming over here and just going, let's do what we do at Marvel. I think you're going to, under his watch, I think you are going to see movies that are vastly different than what come before and are going to be vastly different from Marvel. I really think he's aware of the comparisons people are going to make. And I think he seems like the kind of guy to like come into this role and be like, I'm going to challenge myself and I'm going to do something like different and not what is expected, that I normally do. And listen, he's not directing every fucking movie. He's godfathering this thing, but there's going to be directors hopefully putting their touch, their spin. There's going to be a collaborative, effort into this too. So like, keep in mind, it's not like he's directing every film and everything is just James Gunn. He's just planning the arcs, But I think with coming into this role, like my point is like, he's I think going to do something I think different and surprising and not exactly what you expect James Gunn to do.
I agree.
I really do. And I'm not just saying that. Listen, we're not shills. We don't get paid. We don't get promotions. No one's paying us to say this shit. We're two guys that just like nerding out about this stuff. And hopefully you guys like listening to us. So like that's really, I really do feel that way. I really do feel like this guy's coming in to do something different. And I know everyone's like, well, Zack Snyder came to do something different. Yeah, but it wasn't working. I'm sorry, guys. It wasn't working. This is something that I think is going to be, more commercially viable. Whether we like to hear those words or not, it's the truth. This is how the world works. Things have to be commercially viable, but I think it could still have soul and impact. And, listen, there are filmmakers out there. There are films in the genre that we've seen that do have that. So like, stop with the negativity and let's go for a ride.
Are you at all wounded at the loss of this Batman Beyond film, or like which of these potentially dead projects has you the most bummed? Just to recap, all right, there's Wonder Woman 3, there's a Justice League sequel with the Snyderverse cast, there's a Black Adam.
Is that supposed to be the Crisis thing though that I heard, or is that
I don't know if it's the same thing, but let's just in general a Justice League sequel with those people. The Black Adam 2 sequel looks like it's Gunn, and then we have the Batman Beyond thing and the Man of Steel 2 thing. Of those things potentially going away, which one makes you cry in your soup the most?
So really quickly, it's not Black Adam 2 because I do want to tell the listeners. I did finally see Black Adam.
Yeah.
And it was aggressively okay. I think you were a little higher on it than I am.
I was.
The Rock, like he just like, it's crazy because I feel like that guy has so much charisma. Like even in his Instagram videos, even when he was on WWE all the time, like guy had so much charisma. And then like he plays these characters that are just so one note and wooden. Like he was so one note, and it's like I know he has more range. And it's just like, and also I think he says maybe like 30 lines the whole movie. Like he doesn't talk barely in the movie at all. So anyway, it was just like the plot was kind of all over the place. The villain was not compelling. It was weird. They had the way they kind of like just pulled him out of the action and put him in like in the recover, like whatever, the prison, and then like 10 minutes later they had to pull him back out. That was like just some weird stuff. There was also a really weird thing. I don't know if you noticed this or anyone else caught this. So when you first, around the middle of the movie, when they go back to the flashback, and I think they're starting to reveal spoilers for Black Adam. They're starting to reveal that the flashbacks that you saw, his son originally became the champion first, and then like passed the thing on to him. The first time they actually reveal like the Rock and his like it's obviously his head on like some smaller person's body, whatever. He is speaking in, Kandaki or whatever the word, the language is called. And it's clearly not his voice saying the lines, but then later scenes, it is definitely The Rock saying the Kandaki like lines. Yeah. But like, it's clearly, and it's not even a sound alike. It just sounds like a completely different person. And I'm like, why did his voice change when I don't know. Like that was weird. So there was like some just weird stuff with that. But then also, I don't want to be so negative. Like, I thought Hawkman was awesome. I thought Dr. Fate was really cool. Spoilers, they took him off the table and he dies at the end of it, which stinks because it was Pierce Brosnan, which was awesome. But
he'll be back.
That character and his power set were really cool. Like, really cool. They did a sick job with that. Like, I loved his power set. He was a really cool hero, and I knew nothing about him. So I was like, that stinks that you just took him out. The young heroes were kind of like wasted, and they were like, they had nothing to do. I felt bad actually for the girl Cyclone or whatever. Like they didn't give anything to her. I felt and
she looked like a CW character had just wandered.
Yeah, she really did. Her costume and just the way the powers looked were not good. Funny Ant-Man guy, Giant Man was just like, he's fine. So it was just like there were some high points but like I was just like, like it didn't really do anything, to garner a sequel. Sad to say, and as we know too, we should just mention we didn't mention it like in the report, but the movie's like slated to lose $50 to $100 million. Like it did not.
Well, perform. But he did come out. Johnson apparently came out and rebuked that, and they showed some other kind of voodoo economics where apparently it's going to make $50 million. But even still, I'm like, is that what we're celebrating though? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
it did it. That's not
profit after hyping this shit up for like 10
yeah.
years, you know, like that's not, you know. And honestly, I think that's maybe one of the reasons for these stories this week that Gunn and Safran have had to like throw a cold blanket onto everyone. They can't afford more Black Adam situations.
Yeah, we can't
While
have that.
they're putting together their thing, you can't have producers and actors going into business for themselves, promoting stories that maybe have nothing to do with DC's future. You know, you can't have films that come out that are like separate of the main story that are just going to
This is a
make the
brand.
overall.
This is a brand.
You're
So if
hurting
you
the
have a
whole brand.
shitty Superman movie, like that gets people less pumped for the next Batman movie. Like it is. It's not like, you know, people don't think that. They link it together and they go, oh, this is the DC output. Like it does make a difference. Like, yeah,
it all
you
connects.
cannot have any more of those.
Yeah. So to me, like these announcements this week, these rumors this week, the cold water that's been splashed on a lot of projects this week, a lot of it has to do with because we can't have more Black Adam situations. You know, if you're the boss, you can't have other projects that come out that just muddy the waters and make your main thing look crappy and promise things that maybe we're not going to follow up on. I mean, in terms of broken promises, you know, I still go back to the end of the theatrical Justice League with the table of, you know, seats for 7 and room for more and the tease of the Legion of Doom. Like, you can't keep teasing people your half-baked plans.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like putting everything on ice for now is the most important thing they could have done. And if Patty Jenkins is unhappy about that, I'm sorry. If Charles Roven and Stephen Knight and whoever wanted to make MOS2 is unhappy with that, I'm sorry. If Christina Hudson's script for Batman Beyond was great, but it just doesn't fit anymore, listen, maybe they'll make a comic book out of it. I don't know. But
I never answered the question.
Yeah.
I sidetracked on Black Adam, but
yeah.
The only thing that disappoints me on this is that the Man of Steel 2 is dead. And not, I mean, listen, I don't know if the script was good or not, but it just means that like that's a little further off now. Like that puts that sequel further back. If they are doing a quote unquote sequel, not just doing a reboot, that's probably the only thing that makes me sad. The Batman, I'll be honest, Batman Beyond, I had gotten. So I grew up on Batman the Animated Series. I watched all of that, obviously. But by the time Batman Beyond came out, I think I was like kind of like not into that stuff as much anymore. Or I was like doing other things, and I wasn't like watching cartoons. You know, it's ironically that I'm an older man now, and now I watch cartoons more than I did when I was a teenager. But yeah, like I think it was that. So like I don't have this like diehard attachment to Batman Beyond. Like some people that like grew up, like some people that was their Batman actually. Like they grew up on that. So I don't have this crazy attachment to it and to that. It's a cool idea. But to me, like Bruce Wayne is Batman, always is Batman. He's just Batman, not Terry McGinnis. It's Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
So that's interesting to me that they had this thing going on. But again, like I don't know where it fits. And you know, Wonder Woman 3, I would graciously accept the Wonder Woman 3. I mean, if it's not the Jenkins one, that's fine with me though. You know what I mean? Like I like Gal Gadot as the character, so I'm not attached to like being Patty Jenkins and like that iteration of it. The Snyderverse sequel, I'm just like over it. So like whatever, it's fine. Look, what was it going to be? Was it going to be the sequel that was supposed to be?
No.
Or was it just a different movie with them?
Different movie with them, giving them a chance to be is universally
more confusing
this time.
More confusing. Just stop it. And then and that's it. So I answered that question.
Believe it or not, though, if I were to answer that question, it would be that Justice League movie. Because here's the thing, with the MOS2 thing, I still have this feeling that there's going to be some kind of Superman story very, very shortly. So as bummed as I am that it may not be a direct sequel, you know, I know that there's Superman coming.
Yeah.
But a Justice League story that perhaps would have brought back these characters in a story that gave them a whole new lease on life and maybe separated them from the past and just drops us into some really epic Justice League story. That might, to me, that I see a lot of upside in that one, and it being gone, that's the one where I'm like, that might have been special. If they would have found a way to have these versions of these characters in a new story with new creative energy as a way to try to like make everyone forget about these last few years and focus on this now, I think there's some interesting potential for a Justice League too with this cast. But the end of the day though too, if they weren't going to be able to get Affleck back, there was going to have to be like all of Snyder's crew plus Michael Keaton, and it would have looked a little strange.
Yeah, it would have looked weird.
But
I don't know how that ever would have worked out.
Yeah, so that's the one that I lament, but in general, I ain't lamenting that much. At the end of the day, we have some stuff that we still have to figure out. We're a week away from them presenting their story Bible to Warner Brothers Discovery. By the way, what happens if they pitch it and the studio's like, nah, never mind.
Like, nah. When you go back and
y'all
just do
are
what Marvel did, do what Marvel did.
And then they hire somebody else as the head of DC Studios. I mean, at this point, would you be shocked? I don't know, with all these different back and forths, But yes, we're a week away from presumably Gunn being able to present his big story and us having some real idea of where things are going next.
Presumably, we're just going to have a lot of great weeks of DC news to cover on the show.
Yeah, Hey, they're going to give us lots of fun.
Like a hot season, hopefully. Watch, and then it's like silent for 6 weeks. Like, I don't know what to talk about.
So I think that about does it. Or did you want to talk about anything else, Brett?
Yeah. So I'm going to put my cool little ticker at the bottom. So I did want to just go over, we recently just passed the 2022 Game Awards, which is it's gaming's biggest night, as they call it, which I think is really funny. So a couple of interesting musings. I won't go hopefully too crazy, maybe a little crazy. So the first thing I want to point out is that we knew that a sequel, this stuff intersects with our audience. We knew there was a sequel coming to Jedi Fallen Order, which is a really good video game. Mary, you've been playing it, or have you played it? You haven't beaten
it? I haven't beaten it yet.
Okay. So that's Cal Kestis, all right? And really ended up being a very cool Star Wars game. So we knew there's a sequel coming, and they finally did the big gameplay reveal at the Game Awards. So it takes place 5 years after the first one. So Cal Kestis got a little scruff now. He looks a little more worn down. And Deborah Wilson is back as her character's name. I forgot her character's names. I haven't played the game since it came out. But she's back. And there's still a weird guy with one arm floating in a tube, and they still haven't revealed that identity. I have no idea who it is. But they showed some gameplay. Definitely looks kind of like the first game, but great environments. They showed some cool little boss fights, some cool creatures. So they've been doing a great job with that. There's some cool new stuff you can do with the lightsabers, it looks like, and some customizations. I also think they're adding a blaster. So that's really awesome. And there's a couple of like pre-order bonuses. I think one of the pre-order bonuses is like you get like it's called like the Scoundrel outfit, and it looks like Han Solo's outfit. And you get his blaster. So they have a couple of cool like cosmetic things, which I was hoping they would do more of that in the first game, and they didn't. It was just like, here's 20 different colored ponchos, and it was the same outfit for him. So it looks like you actually have a little more customization. I like that stuff. But the game looks great. It looks like it's the first game did release a little buggy and maybe a little it was a really great proof of concept, and I think overall the game was like excellent. But there was like, some of this stuff could be fine-tuned a little bit, and it looks like things just look a little bit tighter. Just even from the gameplay, watching it, it looks like a little bit of a tighter project. So I'm very excited for that game. It's canon, so that's some cool stuff. I'm curious what surprises we will see. And I think they got a release date. It's coming out next year. It's coming out next year. Maybe March or May or something in that range. April, something. It's gonna be a busy spring. Anyway. There was also, they showed more footage. They showed the first full clip of the Super Mario Brothers movie, introed by Keegan-Michael Key. So a couple of things I want to point out. So first of all, I have to give it to Illumination Studios, man. The animation is like, oh my God. Like, oh my God, how good is the animation? Like the way like the clothing moves, like Mario's like his overalls, like you see wrinkles and creases, just like how he's animated, all the characters. I love, like, you really see they did like this incredible world building. The whole scene is like a minute and a half. It's Toad taking Mario through like Mushroom Kingdom, like leading up to the castle. Yeah. And it's amazing how they integrated, like basically there are coin ATMs and you see Toads hitting them to get money out of the ATM, and they're like breathing heavy, like they're tired, they're exhausted from having to keep hitting it just to get one coin at a time. Very, very funny stuff. There's also a cool little moment where he walks past an antique shop, and it has these like items that look like items from Mario games, but they're like 8-bit looking. And there's a Toad going, "Does this thing work?" And you hear the other Toad in the background. He goes, "Oh yeah, it should." He goes, "You might just have to blow on it," which is a reference to the NES cartridges, which is amazing. So like there, you already see in a minute and a half these little things, and then all the platforms that Mario jumps on in the games are like actual like functional elevators in the world, and that's how the Toads move around, and it's really cool. So like they're just it's so full of life and vivid, and you got to hear a little bit of Chris Pratt's voice a little bit more with the kind of Brooklyn Italian accent.
Advantage of Mario's world. You know what I mean? It's not just like taking one aspect of it and adapting it. It's using like all of Mario's imagery and then all the facets of his games to tell the story.
Yeah. I also want to point out that the composer is Brian Tyler. I'm not sure what else he's done.
Brian Tyler, I think he did Wonder Woman, the first one. Yeah.
Oh, did he? Maybe. Okay, so he's the composer, and a cool thing is that he apparently is working hand in hand with Koji Kondo, the original composer for Mario and Nintendo, to incorporate all the music. So it's one thing that they're doing that the Sonic movies did not do. The Sonic movies have no Sonic music in it. Like the only thing is there's a cute little Easter egg where like James Marsden's cell phone is like the Green Hill Zone theme, and like that's it. But in this minute and 30-second clip, it's a full suite of just Mario music medley woven in full orchestra, great. And it works so good. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like that series has such a rich, music background. So I'm like, it would be such a shame. I'm sure there'd be original stuff in it too, but like, it would be such a shame to like not tap into that well. And in that minute and a half, like they literally pulled like 6 themes from like 6 different games. Like it was awesome. Mario Brothers 3. It was the athletic theme. It was like the actual original like Mario Brothers theme, and like this great just like medley that just went perfect. And I think this movie is going to be absolutely tremendous. This is going to make a shit ton of money. It looks amazing. All the people that were like, "Oh, Illumination's doing it," when they first announced it, dude, honestly, I think this looks better than Pixar movies. It looks absolutely incredible. Like really watch it. Like it is. I've never seen anything like it in my life. The animation's really remarkable.
But will it pack the emotional punch of a Pixar?
I feel like it's gonna. It's gonna. Oh, also, like it's very clear what the plot is now. This is not a saving Princess Peach movie. It's very clear now because also there was another 30-second commercial that aired during the Game Awards that showed more new footage. So it's very clear at this point. Mario and Luigi are starting out in Brooklyn, in New York, in the quote unquote real world. They're animated. It's not like not CG, but they're starting out there, and it's clear that they go into some weird pipe area and then they get transported. There's been name drops of different galaxies, so they're weaving the Mario Galaxy thing in there, and this concept that like Mushroom Kingdom is one galaxy. You see them
going on an odyssey through them.
Yeah, he may be going on an odyssey. You see them like when they obviously go through some pipe, and then they go through some weird like ethereal transport that like, gets into the Mushroom Kingdom. And the plot of the movie seems to be that Mario and Luigi get separated. So the movie is actually about Mario in the Mushroom Kingdom. I think like becoming the hero that we know in the games and going to save his brother. And it looks like with Luigi, he's kind of stuck with Bowser the whole time, and they're weaving some Luigi's Mansion type stuff in.
Yeah.
And I think it is amazing, just like what they're doing. Like I am over the moon. Like you could not ask for anything more as like a diehard Nintendo fan. I think they're doing everything right. This movie is going to be really tremendous. So that's awesome. Other weird thing. So this is a fun thing. Al Pacino was at the Game Awards. Al Pacino came out at the Game Awards. It was also very funny because he could not read the teleprompter and then basically said so. He was like, "I can't read the teleprompter that well. Hoo-ah." And like he didn't do hoo-ah. He didn't hoo-ah. But he really couldn't do it. So it was like really weird and awkward. And also I'm like, oh, Al Pacino's like really old now. That was another thing, another musing. But he introed the first award, which was Best Performance. And of course, Christopher Judge from God of War Ragnarok won. And he came up and he hugged Al Pacino. So I was like, it's canon. Al Pacino and Kratos have hugged. So that was just very random, very fun.
But not burying the lead. What was the biggie?
Yeah, the last thing, and I think most important thing, obviously, rest in peace. We lost Kevin Conroy, probably one of the greatest Batmen ever. So we did get a reveal and some footage from Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which is the Rocksteady Studios' next game, the follow-up to the Arkham games. And we did get the reveal that Batman is in the game, which is interesting because I thought it was going after the Arkham timeline, which, spoilers for Arkham Knight, Batman dies at the end. Yeah. So it's interesting to see him there, unless it's not following after the Arkham universe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But It's Kevin Conroy. Kevin Conroy is back, and he did record the Batman lines for that game, so that will be his final performance. And we did get a release date, I believe, of May 23rd.
So we're going to get more Batman. We're going to get one last ride of Kevin Conroy as Batman.
Yes.
That is the best news that came out of that.
One last ride. And they kind of introed it by they had his famous line, I am vengeance, I am the night, I am Batman. And they played that, and it was really awesome and like powerful. And I was like, oh God, it was so sad. You know, it was definitely like jolting, but that's really cool. So that's awesome that they got him back because he voiced him obviously through all the games. That was like his renaissance. He came back. They were like, we're getting Paul Dini to write the story for Batman Arkham Asylum, and we're getting everyone back. And Hamill was back. I don't think Hamill came back for the last one though. I think it was Troy Baker, right? Did the third one?
Yeah, Troy Baker.
Like someone else did, but he did a great job. Yeah. He did a really good job too.
Yeah.
So that was just kind of a couple of things. Elden Ring got Game of the Year, if you were curious, and they got, I think, Best Direction, and then Best Narrative went to God of War, Best Audio Design. It was pretty much like God of War and Elden Ring were just cleaning up everything. Also I should just mention real quick, they did show a new trailer for Final Fantasy 16, which comes out in like June next year. So seriously, between like May and June, it's like Breath of the Wild, or Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, what did I just say? The Final Fantasy 16, and there were like there's like another 2 like huge games coming out in that time frame.
So what you're saying is on the spring I'm going to hone again because you're going to be very busy.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is that I'm going to have a baby in March, so I don't know when to play any of these video games. I'll somehow get Tears of the Kingdom in there, and that's probably what I'll just be milking. That's the only I can play it handheld while I'm holding a baby. Sure. So that's probably the only console I'm using.
Listen, I have tips for you for getting your gaming in with the baby. Don't worry. I like it. I have a whole bunch of advice.
That's beautiful. But, so that's my stuff. But hey, listen, this is a great episode, and guess what? It's over, maybe, unless you want to say more things.
No, I think it is over. Episode 171. We're going to bring it to a close. If you have a topic or question you'd like us to tackle on an upcoming episode, please send it to TheFanboyPodcast at gmail.com. You can follow us over on the Twitter at The Fanboy Show. You can get directly at Super BrettCon. And you can find me at Superman on Film. So until next week, be kind.
And stay fanboy. So long. Adios.